There is a sound that Joon Kwon had trained himself never to make. A sharp breath. An involuntary inhale. The kind your body produces when something cuts through every wall you have built and finds the thing you buried so deep you forgot it was there.
He made that sound on a Thursday.
It was 4:17 in the afternoon. He remembers the time because he had glanced at his watch as he stepped out of the private elevator on the 32nd floor. He was thinking about a shipment that needed rerouting through Busan. He was thinking about a meeting with a construction front that had been skimming payments. He was thinking about numbers, logistics, pressure. The ordinary machinery of an empire that runs on discipline and fear. He was not thinking about her. He had never thought about her. Not once in 11 months. Nala was a function. She was the woman who made the schedule work, who answered the phone in a voice that made his legitimate clients feel they were dealing with a real company, who organized documents with a precision that his own men could not match. She was efficient. She was invisible. She was exactly what staff should be. And then he heard her laugh. Not the laugh she used for clients. Not the measured, professional sound she produced when a business contact made a weak joke. This was something else entirely. This was low and surprised and real, the kind of laugh that escapes before you can catch it, the kind that tells you the person on the other end of that phone just reached past every defense and touched something genuine. Joon stopped walking. He stood in the corridor, 6 meters from her desk, and he watched something happen to Nala's face that he had never seen in 11 months of her working 3 meters from his office door. Her hand came up and covered her mouth. Her head dipped, and her skin, that deep dark skin that had never been anything to him except background, changed. A warmth flooded up through her cheeks, across her nose, into her temples. She was blushing. Not slightly. Completely. The kind of blush that takes your whole face and announces to anyone watching that something has just happened inside you that you cannot control. She whispered something into the phone. She bit her lower lip, and Joon felt something crack open in the center of his chest that he had spent 16 years sealing shut. He did not know the man's name yet. He did not know anything yet, but his hands had gone cold at his sides and his jaw had locked, and somewhere in the machinery of his chest, a gear that had been frozen for 16 years ground forward one single, irreversible click. To understand why that blush nearly brought down an empire, you have to go back 16 years, to a warehouse on the eastern edge of Incheon, to a woman named Yuna, to the night Joon Kwon held the only woman he ever loved as she bled out on a concrete floor and decided, with her blood still warm on his hands, that he would never make this mistake again. He called it a mistake. Loving her, he called it the single greatest tactical error of his life. And for 16 years, he was right. Until a Thursday afternoon. Until a phone call. Until a woman named Nala smiled at the sound of another man's voice, and Joon Kwon discovered that the wall he built was not as strong as the thing it was built to contain. 16 years before that Thursday, Joon Kwon was a different person. He was 22. He laughed. He drove too fast through the streets of Gangnam with the windows down and music shaking the mirrors. He had his father's jaw and his mother's eyes and a recklessness that made the older men in the syndicate nervous because reckless men are unpredictable and unpredictable men are expensive. But the thing that made him most dangerous at 22 was not his nerve. It was Yuna. She was 21, a music student at Yonsei. She had nothing to do with his world, and that was exactly why he loved her. When he was with Yuna, the machinery stopped. The calculations stopped. She would sit cross-legged on the floor of her tiny apartment and play piano pieces she was learning, and Joon would lie on her couch and close his eyes and feel, for the only time in his life, like a person instead of a position. His father warned him, not gently. His father, the elder Kwon, sat him down in the study of the family estate and told him that love in their world is not a gift. It is an announcement. It tells your enemies exactly where to aim. Joon did not listen. The men who took Yuna were from the Shin Syndicate. They wanted leverage over the elder Kwon during a territory negotiation. They grabbed her on a Wednesday evening from the sidewalk outside her apartment building. They left her phone on the ground with the screen cracked so the Kwon family would know exactly what had happened and exactly how powerless they were meant to feel. Joon's father ordered him to stand down. Wait for negotiation. Let the professionals handle it. Every protocol in their world said the same thing. You do not move on emotion. You move on leverage. Joon went alone. He found the warehouse on the eastern edge of Incheon through a contact who owed him a debt. He went in through a side entrance with a handgun he barely knew how to use properly and the kind of desperate courage that only exists in people who have not yet learned what it costs. He found her in the basement. And the details of what had been done to her in 48 hours are details the story will not carry because some things do not need to be described to be understood. What matters is what happened next. She spoke his name.
Once.
Her hand came up and touched his face, and her fingers were cold, and her eyes found his and held them, and for 3 seconds they were back in her apartment with the piano playing, and the world outside not mattering. Then her hand fell, and the light behind her eyes went somewhere he could not follow. He carried her out. He walked through the warehouse corridors with her body in his arms and his face set in an expression that the two Kwon men who had followed him without his knowledge would later describe as the most frightening thing they had ever seen. Not grief, not rage. As if the person walking out of that warehouse was not the same person who had walked in. His father met him at the family estate. Joon laid Yuna's body down on the couch in the study, the same room where his father had warned him, and his father looked at him and said the words that would become the architecture of the next 16 years of his life. This is what love costs in our world. It makes you predictable. It made her a target. If you want to lead this family, you will never make this mistake again. Joon buried Yuna on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, he had stopped being the boy who drove too fast and laughed too loud. The scar on his jaw came 3 weeks later, from a fight he walked into deliberately because he wanted to feel something external that matched what was happening inside. After it healed, he never sought pain again.
He did not need to.
He had found something more effective than pain. Control. He took over the syndicate at 26 when his father's health failed. By 30, the Kwon name controlled half of Seoul's underground economy. By 35, even the police spoke his name quietly. And in all those years, through all the women who tried, through all the arrangements and introductions and calculated seductions sent his way by allies and rivals alike, Joon Kwon never once felt the thing he felt in that warehouse basement. He made sure of it. He built the wall so high and so thick that eventually he forgot there was anything behind it at all. And then Nala arrived. She came to Seoul the way most extraordinary things arrive. Quietly, without announcement, through a door so ordinary that nobody thought to watch it. Nala had taken the position at Kwon Capital Partners because it paid 40% more than anything else available on her visa category, and because the job description asked for someone fluent in English, French, and Korean, which eliminated most of the competition. She had learned Korean in London from a roommate who traded language lessons for help with English essays. She had not learned it for love or fascination. She had learned it because it was there to be learned, and Nala did not leave available tools on the table. She arrived on a Monday in March. She wore a structured navy blazer she had bought secondhand in Itaewon and altered herself. She carried a single leather bag. She introduced herself to the floor manager, was shown to her desk, and began working before the other assistants had finished their morning coffee. Within a week, the office noticed her. Within a month, they stopped noticing her, which was far more impressive. Nala had a gift for becoming essential without becoming visible. She filed reports before they were requested. She anticipated scheduling conflicts 3 days in advance. She handled the foreign clients with a warmth that made them feel personally attended to and handled the Korean executives with a respect that never tipped into subservience. She was, in every measurable way, the best assistant the 32nd floor had ever seen. And she knew it. Not with arrogance, but with the quiet certainty of a woman who had spent her life proving that she belonged in rooms that had not invited her and had grown tired of the proving, but had not yet figured out how to stop. The first time she entered Joon's office, he did not look up. He was reading a report. She placed a revised contract on the left side of his desk, exactly where she had been told he preferred documents, and she said, "The Haesung file, updated with the corrections from legal." Her voice was steady, warm without being familiar, professional without being cold. Joon turned a page of his report. He did not acknowledge her. She waited exactly 3 seconds, the precise interval between respect and wasted time, and then she left. She did this every day for 3 months. Documents placed precisely. Information delivered cleanly. No small talk. No attempt to catch his eye or earn a word beyond the occasional grunt that served as his acknowledgement that she existed. And this is the part that mattered. This is the part that separated Nala from every other woman who had ever tried to breach the wall of Joon Kwon.
She did not try.
She did not smile too long. She did not find excuses to linger. She did not ask personal questions or comment on his suits or mention that she had read about his mother's charity foundation. She did her work. She went home. And the absence of effort, the complete lack of performance, was the very thing that made her impossible to ignore. Because Joon was trained to detect manipulation. His entire life was built on reading people, identifying what they wanted from him, and using that knowledge as either weapon or shield. Every woman who had ever approached him had wanted something, and he could see it on them like a scent. The daughter of a political ally who wanted access. The model at a gala who wanted the thrill of danger. The business associate who wanted a merger sealed with something warmer than a signature. He knew what desire looked like when it was aimed at him. He had cataloged every version. And not once, not in 11 months, did he see it on Nala. What he did not understand, what it would take him far too long to recognize, was that the absence of performance was not the absence of feeling. Nala noticed him. She noticed the way he held his pen when he was angry, gripping it like a weapon. She noticed the way his voice dropped half a register when he was about to deliver bad news, as if his body was trying to soften what his words would not. She noticed the photograph in the desk drawer, face down, that he opened and looked at when he thought no one was watching. She noticed everything. She just never let him see her noticing. And here is something I need to ask you before we go further. This story takes place in Seoul, but the feeling of it, the tension of navigating a world where you're both needed and invisible, that feeling lives everywhere. Drop in the comments where you are watching from right now, because I have a feeling this story is going to hit differently depending on where you have had to prove you belong. 11 months passed in this invisible arrangement. Nala became the most reliable part of Joon's day, without either of them naming it. His coffee appeared at precisely 8:45 every morning, made with the specific ratio he preferred but had never told anyone. She had figured it out by watching. His calls were screened with an accuracy that meant he never once had to speak to someone he did not want to speak to. His legitimate business contacts began asking for Nala by name, which meant the Kwon front companies had never seemed more professional. Joon's body learned her before his mind did. He knew her footsteps. Not because he had studied them, but because his body had decided, without permission, that her footsteps mattered. Among the dozen people who walked that corridor daily, he could identify hers. The rhythm, the weight, the faint sound of her heels on the polished floor that was somehow both deliberate and unhurried. He knew the scent she carried, shea butter and something faintly warm beneath it, something that he could not name, but that had begun to register as a signal in his nervous system. When she entered a room, His body knew before his eyes confirmed it. When she was absent for 2 days with a flu in July, the 32nd floor felt wrong, like a room with one light switched off. Joon found himself irritated all day without being able to locate the source. He snapped at Victor. He rejected a deal that he would normally have approved. On the second day, he told the floor manager to call her and confirm when she would return, then immediately regretted giving the instruction because it implied he had noticed she was gone. He had noticed. He hated that he had noticed. And the hatred itself was a warning he refused to hear. Then came Thursday. 4:17 in the afternoon. The corridor. The walk toward the elevator. And the sound of Nala laughing in a way that was not meant for him, had never been produced for him, had nothing to do with him at all.
She was talking to someone. A man.
Joon could not hear the words clearly, but he could hear the register.
Low.
Intimate. The voice of someone who had learned how to make another person feel like the only person in the room, even through a phone line. And Nala was responding. Her head tilted. Her fingers went to the small gold stud in her left ear, touching it absently the way people touch themselves when they are thinking about being touched. She whispered something, and then she did the thing that ended 16 years of frozen discipline in 4 seconds. She bit her lower lip and looked down and smiled with her whole face, and Joon watched the blush move through her like a wave, rising through her cheeks and spreading to her temples, and he understood in a single, catastrophic instant that this woman, this invisible, efficient, impenetrable woman, was capable of feeling things she had never once shown him. She could blush. She could soften. She could be reached.
Just not by him.
He stood in that corridor for 11 seconds. He counted them later in his memory, replaying the moment with the obsessive precision of a man trying to locate exactly when the structural failure began. 11 seconds of watching Nala be soft for another man. Then he turned and walked into the elevator and pressed the button for the parking garage and sat in his black sedan in the dark for 45 minutes with the engine off. He called Victor at 6 that evening. The woman on my floor, the assistant, Nala. He paused. He had never said her name aloud before. It felt dangerous in his mouth, like biting down on something that could break his teeth. Find out who she was talking to today. 4:15. Her desk phone. I want a name, a background, and a photograph on my desk by morning. Victor was silent for 3 seconds. Victor had known Joon for 20 years. He had seen him order men to be hurt. He had seen him end business relationships that destroyed families. He had never once heard this particular quality in his boss's voice. This was not a command. This was a compulsion wearing a command's clothing. Understood, Victor said. And he hung up and sat in his own car for a long moment because Victor understood exactly what was happening, and he knew, with the certainty of a man who had watched the Yuna situation from the inside, that what was beginning now would either save Joon or finish him. Now I want you to think about this for a moment. Joon has not spoken to Nala about anything personal in 11 months. He has barely acknowledged her existence. But the moment she shows softness for someone else, he dispatches his enforcer to investigate a phone call. Here is my question, and I genuinely want to see where you land on this. Is what Joon is feeling right now the beginning of love, or is it just possession? Is there a difference? Tell me in the comments, because the answer to that question is going to determine how you experience every single thing that happens next. The file was on his desk by 7 the next morning. Daniel Park, 31, Korean-American, born in Chicago, raised between Seoul and San Francisco. Architecture degree from Columbia. Currently running a small but respected studio in Yongsan-gu. No criminal connections. His photograph showed a man with an easy smile and open shoulders and the kind of relaxed handsomeness that comes from never having been afraid of anything important. Joon read the file 3 times. He memorized every detail. He did this with the same meticulous attention he applied to threat assessments of rival operations, and the fact that he was applying this machinery to a 31-year-old architect who designed community libraries did not strike him as disproportionate.
Not yet.
They had met at a weekend language exchange event in Itaewon. Nala had been attending Saturday sessions for months, practicing her Korean conversational skills. Daniel had been there to practice his French with the international group. They had been paired for a cross-language exercise. He had made her laugh within 5 minutes. That detail was in the file because Victor was thorough. And that detail, more than any other, made something in Joon's chest tighten like a fist closing around a nerve. He made her laugh within 5 minutes. Joon had not made anyone laugh in 16 years. He had not tried. Laughter required openness. Openness required trust. Trust required the kind of vulnerability that gets people killed in warehouses in Incheon. He had excised that entire sequence from his operating system and replaced it with something more efficient.
Fear.
Respect. Distance. But now here was a file telling him that a man who designed buildings for communities had accomplished in 5 minutes what Joon had never attempted in 11 months. And the worst part, the part that sat in his stomach like a stone, was that Daniel Park was not a threat. He was not a rival. He was not someone Joon could outmaneuver or dismantle or make disappear. He was simply a good man. And Joon had no protocol for good men. What followed was a masterclass in self-destruction disguised as discipline. Joon began finding reasons to keep Nala late. Meetings that had always ended at 5 now stretched to 7. Documents that could have been emailed were requested in person, delivered to his hand, requiring her to enter his office and stand near enough that he could identify the exact shea butter she used. He began scheduling calls during her lunch hour. He began reviewing her work with a scrutiny he had never applied before, not because the work was flawed, but because finding flaws gave him a reason to speak to her. He was pulling her closer by pretending to be harder on her, and he could not see it. But everyone else could. Victor saw it. Victor watched his boss request a third revision of a document that had been flawless the first time and said nothing, but the muscle in his jaw tightened because he remembered what happened last time Joon Kwon started orbiting a woman. Sarah saw it. She visited the office on a Wednesday under the pretense of bringing lunch for her brother, and she watched Joon's eyes track Nala across the open floor as Nala walked to the printer and back. The tracking was not conscious. It was the involuntary surveillance of a man whose body has identified something important and is monitoring it without permission from the mind. Sarah sat across from her brother and watched his gaze follow a woman he claimed not to notice, and she felt two things simultaneously. Hope, because she had spent 16 years believing her brother might be dead inside, and here was evidence that he was not. And terror, because the last time Joon's heart woke up, a woman died. "Who is she?" Sarah asked. Joon looked at his sister. His face was perfectly blank. "Who is who?" Sarah held his gaze for a long moment. Then she picked up her chopsticks and said nothing else, because she understood that the most dangerous conversations are the ones a person is not yet ready to have with themselves. Nala was not stupid. She had survived too many rooms where survival required reading the air to miss what was happening on the 32nd floor. Joon's behavior had shifted. The late meetings. The impossible standards applied to work that had been accepted without comment for nearly a year. The way he now said her name, slowly, deliberately, as if he was testing how it felt in his mouth each time. She registered all of it. And she filed it in the same place she filed every complicated signal from powerful men in spaces where she had no structural protection. She filed it under, manage carefully. But Daniel was making the management harder. Daniel called when he said he would. Daniel showed up when he promised. Daniel asked her questions about her childhood in Accra and her years in Nairobi, and then he listened. not with the performative attention of a man trying to impress, but with the genuine curiosity of someone who found her interesting because she was interesting. She liked Daniel. More than liked. When he was near, she felt the specific relief of being with someone who made the world feel uncomplicated. He was bright where Joon was shadow. He was open where Joon was locked. He was the kind of man her mother would have approved of, the kind you build a stable life with, the kind who does not carry the sort of darkness that makes your hands shake when he stands too close. But Joon made her hands shake. She hated admitting it even to herself. When Joon stood in the doorway of his office and spoke her name in that low-measured voice, something in her body responded before her mind could intervene. It was not attraction in the simple sense. It was recognition. The sense that behind the ice and the precision and the wall of discipline, there was something wounded and true and desperately controlled, and that the control itself was the evidence of how powerful the thing behind it must be. She recognized it because she carried her own version of it. The composure that everyone admired in Nala was not calm. It was armor. It was the learned behavior of a woman who understood that in rooms where she was the only one who looked like her, showing too much feeling was a luxury she could not afford. They were the same. She knew it, and knowing it was the most dangerous thing she knew. Then the discovery changed everything. It came through Daniel, of all people. He was designing a project for a neighborhood association that had been pressured by Kwon-linked businesses. He had done his research. He showed Nala an article on his laptop one evening over dinner, not to accuse her but to warn her, the way a kind man warns someone he cares about when he sees them standing near fire they might not know is burning. The article was 3 years old. It detailed a police investigation into the Kwon Syndicate's construction front operations. It named Joon. It included a photograph of him entering a courthouse. And it connected Kwon Capital Partners, the company whose name was on Nala's work visa, to a network that the article described in terms that made Nala's stomach drop. She sat across from Daniel in a restaurant in Gangnam and felt the floor tilt beneath her. Everything she had built in Seoul. Her visa, her professional reputation, her careful, disciplined, invisible life. All of it was anchored to an organization run by a man who was not a difficult executive. He was a criminal, and not a small one. The kind whose name makes prosecutors hesitate. She went home that night and sat on the edge of her bed in her small apartment in Mapo-gu and stared at the wall and tried to calculate the rational next step. Resign. Find another sponsor. Leave. But her phone buzzed on the nightstand, and the screen showed a message from the office system. It was Joon. A meeting rescheduled to 8:30 the next morning. The message was 2 lines. Professional. Cold. And Nala looked at that message and felt the thing she could not afford to feel. Not fear. Something worse than fear. Concern. For him. For a man she now knew was everything she should run from, and the concern was so irrational and so deep that she pressed her hands against her face and breathed into the dark and understood that she was in far more trouble than a work visa problem. Now let me stop here because I know what some of you are feeling right now, and I feel it too. Nala has done nothing wrong. She came to Seoul to work. She kept her head down. She did her job better than anyone else on that floor. And now her entire life is tangled up in a world she never chose because a man who cannot even admit his feelings decided to make her the center of his obsession without her consent. If that makes you angry, if that feels unfair, hold that feeling. Because what happens next is going to test whether you think people deserve second chances even when they have earned every consequence coming to them. Joon saw it on her face the next morning. The shift. Something behind her eyes had rearranged, and although her behavior was identical, her precision unchanged, her voice the same measured professional instrument it had always been, the air between them was different. She knew. He could not identify what she knew or how she knew it, but the quality of her gaze when it crossed his head changed from professional neutrality to something more complex. Something that looked, if he allowed himself to read it, like a person looking at a building and seeing for the first time that it is not a building at all but a cage with the door painted to look like a wall. For 3 weeks, they existed in this new frequency. Nothing was said. Nothing changed in the visible structure of their days. But everything was different, and both of them knew it, and neither of them spoke because speaking would make it real, and real things in Joon's world have consequences. It was Sarah who forced the crisis. She appeared in Joon's office on a Friday evening, after the floor had emptied, and she sat in the chair across from his desk and said, "I know about the architect." Joon did not ask how she knew. Sarah had her own networks within the Kwon world, quieter than his, more attuned to the human dimensions he refused to track. "I also know what you're doing," she said. "The late meetings, the impossible deadlines. You are pulling her closer, and you are telling yourself it is work." It is work. It is Yuna. The name landed in the room like a dropped blade. Joon's face did not change, but his hand on the desk went still in a way that Sarah recognized as the physical signature of pain being locked behind a closed door. "This is not Yuna," he said.
No.
"It is not. Because Yuna loved you and you loved her, and she died because your world found her. And Nala does not love you, and you will not admit you love her, and she will die for the same reason if you do not stop." Joon stared at his sister for a long time, and for the first time in years, Sarah saw something in his face that was not iron. It was exhaustion. The bone-deep weariness of a man who has been fighting the same war for 16 years and is beginning to suspect that the enemy is not the world but himself. The next morning, Joon called Victor and gave an order. Nala was to be transferred to Kwon Foundation, a legitimate charitable subsidiary operating out of a separate building in Songpagu. The position was a lateral move. Same salary, better hours, and most importantly, a different building, a different floor, a different world. He told himself this was protection. He told himself he was removing the variable before the equation could become what it became with Yuna.
He was doing the responsible thing.
The disciplined thing. The thing his father would have approved of. He did not tell Nala himself. He had Victor deliver the paperwork. And Nala sat at her desk and read the transfer notice and felt two things she did not expect. The first was relief because she understood exactly what this was and why he was doing it, and it confirmed something she had suspected but never seen evidence of. He cared. The transfer was proof. You do not protect people you are indifferent to. The second feeling was grief, because the transfer also meant he had chosen the wall. He had looked at the crack she had made in it and decided to patch it with distance rather than walk through. She signed the paperwork that afternoon, and for 3 days, it seemed like the story would end there. A man too damaged to love. A woman too wise to wait. A door closed quietly with mutual understanding on both sides. 3 days of silence. 3 days of the 32nd floor adjusting to the absence of shea butter in the corridor and footsteps that no longer came. Then the Shin Syndicate made their move. The Shin family had been watching Joon for 2 years. Watching and waiting and building a file of their own. Not a business file. A personal one. Because the old leader of the Shin Syndicate, the man whose men had taken Yuna 16 years ago, was dead. But his son, a man named Shin Tae-ho, was not. And Shin Tae-ho had inherited his father's operation and his father's grudge, and one thing more: patience. He had watched Joon build the wall. He had watched every woman bounce off it. And he had waited, with the discipline of a man who understood that the most effective weapon against an armored target is not a bigger gun, but the thing that makes the armor come off. Shin Tae-ho had identified Nala 3 months ago. His people had observed the same thing Victor and Sarah had observed. The tracking. The late meetings. The unprecedented behavior of a man who had never before noticed a woman on his staff. And when Joon transferred Nala, Taeho did not see protection. He saw confirmation. The approach was surgical. They did not grab her. That was his father's mistake, the brute method that created martyrs and triggered wars. Instead, Taeho sent a message. Nala arrived at the Kwon Foundation office on her fourth morning to find a photograph in an envelope on her desk. The photograph showed her walking from her apartment in Mapogu to the bus stop. It had been taken from across the street. On the back, in neat handwriting, were 4 words in English. He cannot protect you. Nala held that photograph in her hands for a full minute. Her first instinct was not fear. It was anger. A cold, structural anger at the realization that her body, her movements, her daily life had been reduced to leverage in a war she had not enlisted in. She was not a piece on anyone's board. She had never agreed to be. Her second instinct was practical. She photographed the envelope and the image with her phone. She placed them in her bag. And then she did something that surprised even herself. She did not call the police. She did not call Daniel. She called Sarah. Because Nala understood something that most people in her position would not have had the clarity to see. The threat was not from Joon. The threat was aimed at Joon through her. And the person most likely to help her navigate this without triggering the full-scale war that the photograph was designed to provoke was not Joon himself, who would react with the nuclear fury of a man reliving his worst nightmare, but his sister, who understood the emotional terrain and the tactical landscape in equal measure. Sarah answered on the second ring. She listened, and then she said one word that told Nala everything she needed to know about how serious this was. Stay. But Joon found out before Sarah could manage the information. Victor's network flagged the Shin surveillance before Nala had even finished her call to Sarah. And what happened next was precisely what Sarah had feared. Joon did not respond as a strategist. He responded as a man watching history repeat itself with a different woman's face. He stormed into the foundation building at 11 in the morning. He crossed the open office floor in front of 30 employees. He walked directly to Nala's desk and he looked at her, and his face carried an expression that none of those 30 employees had ever seen on the most controlled man in Seoul. Raw fear. Not anger. Not authority. Fear. The undiluted terror of a man who has already watched one woman die for the crime of being close to him and is now watching the setup for a second. He said, "Come with me. Now." And every person on that floor saw it. The performance of control that Joon had maintained for 16 years cracked open in front of witnesses, and the thing that spilled out was not the cold authority they expected. It was something human, desperate, and completely, irreversibly exposed. The rival syndicate did not need to take Nala. They had already won something more valuable. They had made Joon show his hand in public. And in a world built on the projection of invulnerability, a public display of fear is a wound that every competitor can smell. Within 24 hours, the word had spread through every syndicate network in Seoul. Joon Kwon has a weakness, and her name is Nala. I need you to pause and make a prediction right now because we are about to enter the part of the story where everything converges. 16 years ago, Joon went alone to save Yuna, and he was too late. Now history is circling back with Nala in the crosshairs and the entire Seoul underworld watching. What do you think Joon does this time? Does he make the same mistake? Does he push Nala away for good? Or does he do something nobody expects? Shin Taeho's demand arrived at midnight. It was delivered not by phone or message, but by Victor, who had been approached by a Shin intermediary at a restaurant in Cheongdam-dong with a proposal wrapped in politeness and edged with threat. 3 territories. The Gangnam Entertainment Corridor, the Incheon Port Logistics Line, the Yongsan redevelopment contracts. In exchange, the surveillance on Nala stops. Her safety guaranteed. A gentleman's agreement between organizations. The alternative was left unspoken because it did not need to be spoken. Everyone in the room carried the memory of what the Shin family had done to Yuna 16 years ago. The silence said everything. Victor delivered the terms to Joon at 1 in the morning in the study of the Kwon estate. The same room where his father had delivered the lecture about love and cost. The same couch. The same amber lamp. Joon listened. And then he did something Victor had never seen in 20 years of service. He asked for help. Not from Victor alone. From Sarah. From Mother Kwon, who had not been consulted on syndicate matters in a decade, but who understood the political geography of Seoul's underworld better than anyone alive because she had survived it longer than anyone alive. From 2 lieutenants who had served the family since Joon's father's era. He did not go alone. That was the difference. That was the 16 years speaking. The 22-year-old Joon ran on impulse and love, and it cost him everything. The 38-year-old Joon ran on love and strategy, and the hard-learned understanding that strength is not the same as solitude. The operation took 3 days to plan. Sarah went to Nala first. She found her in the small apartment in Mapo-gu, sitting on the edge of her bed with a packed bag by the door. Nala had already prepared to run. She had a flight researched. She had money set aside. She had done everything a rational, self-preserving woman should do when she discovers she has been made a target in a war she never joined. I have a flight to Nairobi on Sunday, Nala said. Sarah sat down beside her. That is the smart choice. I know. My brother will not ask you to stay. He will never ask. He would rather lose you safely than keep you in danger. That is how he loves. By letting go. It is the only way he has ever known. Nala looked at Sarah. And is that enough? No, Sarah said. It is not. It is the thing that broke him the first time, and it will break him again. But he will do it because he thinks it is the only way to keep you alive. There was silence between them, the kind that fills the space before a decision that will redirect a life. What if I stay? Nala said, then you are choosing this world, with everything that means. I am choosing him. There is a difference. The operation moved on Friday. Victor and his team dismantled the Shin surveillance network in 12 hours, identifying and removing every operative watching Nala's movements, her apartment, her route. Simultaneously, Mother Kwon activated a political connection she had maintained for decades, a prosecutor who owed the Kwon family a debt from the elder Kwon's era, and the Shin syndicate's legitimate business fronts found themselves under sudden, devastating regulatory investigation. It was not violence. It was architecture. Joon did not destroy the Shin family. He made it impossible for them to operate without exposing themselves to the legal machinery that their entire business model depended on avoiding. He turned their own structure against them. And he did it without firing a single shot because this time, the war was not about territory. It was about making sure the woman he loved woke up safe every morning for the rest of her life. Shin Taeho's response was retreat. Not defeat. Retreat. The distinction mattered, and Joon knew it. But the immediate threat was neutralized, and for the first time in weeks, the air around Nala cleared. Joon came to her apartment on Saturday evening. Not with Victor. Not with guards. Alone. But differently alone than 16 years ago. This time, alone because some things cannot be said with witnesses. Nala opened the door. The packed bag was still by the bed. She had not unpacked it. She had not booked the flight either. Joon stood in her doorway and looked at her and said nothing. For a long time, he said nothing. And Nala watched something happen to his face that she had never seen in all the months of cold meetings and impossible deadlines and one-word responses. The wall came down. Not dramatically. Not like a collapse. Like a man slowly unclenching a fist he has held closed so long that the opening of it is painful and awkward and terrifying. His mouth opened.
Closed.
Opened again. The most powerful man in Seoul's underworld. The man whose single word could rearrange the economy of entire districts could not find words. And this, right here, this moment, is why I tell these stories. Because there is nothing more powerful than watching a person who has been locked inside themselves for years find someone worth opening for. If this story has reached you, if you have been holding your breath for the last few minutes waiting for this man to say something, then you understand what this channel is about.
Subscribe.
Not for me, for the stories. Because I have more coming and they all hit like this.
He spoke.
His voice was low and rough with disuse of anything honest. I do not know how to do this. I have not done this in 16 years. I do not know if I am capable of it anymore. But I transferred you to protect you, and it did not work. I built walls, and they did not work. I try not to know your name, and I know your name. I try not to hear your voice, and I hear it when you are not in the room. I try to be what my father told me to be, and I have succeeded at everything he asked except the one thing that mattered. I cannot stop this. Nala stood very still. Then she took one step forward and placed her hand flat against his chest, over his heart, the way Yuna had placed her hand against his face in the warehouse basement 16 years ago. The same gesture, a different woman, a different ending. Then stop trying, she said. The morning after is not dramatic. That is how you know it is real. Nala made coffee in her small kitchen. Joon sat at her table, in the same black sweater from the night before, and watched her move through the space with the specific attention of a man who is memorizing ordinary details because he has learned that ordinary is the most precious thing in the world and the easiest to lose. She set a cup in front of him. He wrapped both hands around it. Their fingers touched on the ceramic, and neither of them moved away. What happens now? She asked. I do not know. I have never gotten this far. She sat across from him. Your world is dangerous. Yes. And I am a target now, whether I stay or go. Yes.
His jaw tightened.
And I will spend the rest of my life making sure that fact never costs you anything. That is not a promise you can keep.
No.
But it is a promise I will die trying to keep, and that is different from the man I was a month ago who would have simply let you go and called it strength. If you know someone who needed this story today, someone who has been told that they are too guarded, someone who has been told that they are too much or too complicated or too wounded to be loved, send them this video. Because Joon spent 16 years believing his father's words, and it took one woman's refusal to let him disappear to prove those words wrong. Share this. Some stories need to travel. Nala did not unpack the bag that day. She left it by the bed for a week, not as hesitation, but as honesty. A reminder to herself and to Joon that she had chosen this with open eyes and could choose differently at any time. That she was not trapped. She was present. Sarah visited on Sunday. She stood in the doorway of Nala's apartment and saw her brother sitting at the kitchen table reading something on his phone with a cup of coffee in his hand, and she pressed her hand over her mouth and turned away and cried in the hallway where he could not see. Not from sadness. From the 16 years of grief she had carried for the brother she thought was gone, suddenly released by the sight of him sitting in someone's kitchen like a human being. Mother Kwon sent Nala a package on Monday. No note. Just a small wrapped box containing a bracelet of jade and gold that had belonged to the Kwon women for 3 generations. Nala did not know this when she opened it. Sarah told her later, and Nala sat holding the bracelet and understanding that acceptance in this family did not come with words. It came with objects that carried history. If you think Joon fought hard for Nala, you have no idea what is coming when the threat lands on the one person he never thought to protect. His sister. Part 2 of this story is going to break records, and I need you here for it. Subscribe right now. Turn on notifications. Because when part 2 drops, you do not want to be late. And if this story moved you, prove it. Leave a comment. Tell me which moment got you. Tell me which character you cannot stop thinking about. I read every single one. I will see you in part 2.